specifically in Scrum as well. Just share my screen. Open pages. Okay. Oh. This is so am I sharing this? Yep. Yes. Okay. Let's see. So basically, we were talking here in the rolling interactions, and we had these questions like the actor definition questions here, and some other related questions. I sent this to the client today, and he came back to us with some interesting quotes. So I created under this sub-document that's client interactions to try to summarize everything. And we had a new, and I pasted here the email. I'm not sure if you guys were able to look into his answers, but this solved some questions that we had, but also brought a new bunch of questions that I'm not quite sure this fit. So were you able to look into this, into the client answers?
Excuse me, I did, and I added a little bit to your further new questions. I also put some comments in here in red, which are not intended to be seen by the client. So those are just for discussion on this meeting. The comments in red there.
Okay.
Hoping my voice holds out here.
So basically, I'm going to try to get this. I had a bunch of questions, and the new things that I saw from the answers was that one of our major questions was MetPlus itself. If MetPlus would be some sort of super agency that would be the middleman in all of this, but apparently from the answers, I think not. But so I'm not sure if you guys read and if you have something different, if you saw the answer for this question in chat answer, but I don't think so. So I think from the answers, I think it's safe to assume that MetPlus would be one more agency in this system, but I want to make sure that that's it, because it says here something. Let me try to see if I can. It's in the peer. The other agencies will just list the software from pets. That's a question that I have also. MetPlus will keep the movements of the pet system. MetPlus and the other agencies aren't connected in any other way. So from this specific phrase, I believe he is saying that MetPlus will be an agency, as all the other agencies, but would be like the owner of the pets product. Yes, that would be the difference. So they would have like the same functionality, the job developers, career managers, and okay.
What's that?
I saw you rephrase some things I wrote. You know.
Oh, actually, I
No,
just
no, no,
added
no,
a
no. We just added something in here.
added a
You did
sub
not put it
question.
on red, so I thought you'd rephrase it. Oh, so tired today. So we're in like in my company, we're like in our second day of sprint planning, and I'm getting crazy with the amount of things going on. So it has been 2 rough days, but okay. So I tried to get this more.
So I have a question with regard to the
Yeah.
business side. He
hmm
says that the other agencies will lease the software
hmm
and MetPlus will maintain the PET system. Does he mean that he's going to be a like he's going to spin up instances of this, or is there going to be that relates to the multi-tenancy question? But if there is multiple instances, I mean, what does lease really mean,
Yeah.
given that
That's
the software itself is open source?
one question that I placed here. That is exactly that. What does lease mean? Maybe we can just rephrase this and try. I am trying to create questions that will get an answer like an yes/no answer, because um, when you leave the questions a little bit open, sometimes it, in one hand it's good, in the other hand not that much. But sometimes we just write things and we find new requirements here in the middle of new things, like this new actor that they just placed here, like the manager of the agency. So I'm trying to rephrase this to try to.
I mean, does he intend to lease it as a service, say?
From what I saw from some comments that he has here, like the goal is to be able to customize many names within the system that is relevant to the ultimate goal. And from another one that I saw somewhere around here, it looks like that what he wants is to have like from after reading this, I remembered of this remembered me of Tailio. Do you know?
Yeah, Jackson.
Yeah, basically Tailio as like an
Correct.
application, and basically you have like subdomains that are specific for each company. Maybe he's thinking of something like that.
Oh. What I got out of that, you are the language he's using is kind of tough to read because
Yeah.
he's writing in a very like a spoken language almost as opposed to written. But I think he's saying in an agency. This goes back to the question we had when he alluded to a branch code. An agency might have multiple locations, 4 different addresses as an example. So he wants to make sure that we keep track of essentially each branch within the agency and each of the branches association with employers. I think that's what he's trying to say. I don't think it changes anything on us. We're just back to a single agency with multiple locations. We can call those locations branches and manage it that way.
Uh, I'm not sure what Michael was asking was about the lease, what he meant, because it looks like he wants to have some sort of another agency. I don't know. He named some of them here, like an example it was like this Get Back to Work Workforce Development Agency or something. They would want to have some sort of subdomain where they have their things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we need to try to understand what he means by lease in here, maybe to try to understand if he wants to have some sort of subdomains and specific jobs inside them, and how would that work?
Yeah, I think we were almost at the point where we were saying there's no association between agencies, which is actually what he said somewhere. But there is ambiguity in that last section, no doubt about it.
This last part.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I got pretty confused, especially when he starts talking about companies and he says that up here that an agency can consider an agency like a company. So I got completely confused here. So I don't know. Where was it? Oh, this. I have a question. New question is. It says here, what does it mean? Some companies may be linked. I'm not sure what it means with link.
Yeah.
If he just wants to say, okay, there's a company that has an office in Seattle and another one, I don't know, in Washington. Is this what it means? Or does it mean like a company A and a company B that are both part of the group C? Uh, I don't
I, yeah, we have to clarify that. I'm hoping it's just an agency can have multiple locations. Each
Yeah.
location we'll call a branch, and it's a very simple model.
It is a simple model, and at the same time, it's not because it would make the hierarchy much more confusing. Because if we have to have, because we need, if we have agencies that are branches, we would have to have like um, case managers that would report to um, a
So
branch manager that would have a central manager.
that's a whole other thing you're getting into, which I'd like to avoid.
Yes,
But
so
yeah,
I also would like to avoid that because it looks like pretty deep thing. And if we're talking just okay, if we if we're talking into branches into this sense of having multiple locations with multiple things that are different between branches, that would make the system much more complex.
yeah. So we're talking probably agencies an agency could have multiple locations. Branch is too heavy a word. Let's just use location. They just have
Uh,
an office here, there, and
yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah. The thing is, if we need to, because when I read these locations, I thought locations that would be like a company, and you can have jobs. You can create a job in the location, the office A or office B. But if if the agencies themselves can have multiple locations that can have different jobs on them,
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
This would
If you
make the system hell.
if you look at the third from the bottom paragraph there, and I'm trying to simplify what he said. So the last sentence, he says, so a company. Now, a company here, he's referring to an agency because he's trying to think of as think of an agency. They have bosses, somebody manages the job developers, etc. So they're a company. They can have 4 separate addresses. This agency, but he wants the system name to be able for him to be able to see the 4 different locations. The last part of that sentence is important. He says to know who is working with who. Now, what he's saying, I think, is that if he hears an agency is working with an employer, and in particular a particular location at that other agency, in his mind he says, "Oh yeah, I know Joe, who works at that location for that agency. I'll call my friend Joe and find out what's going on." I think that's what he's thinking about when he wrote that sentence. I think that's how I interpret that. But again, we do have to clarify this, be a little very, very specific in what this means, but that's how I'm reading.
So,
You understand what I'm saying? In his mind, I can see him thinking that way.
can one person in one agency have more than one role? Can one agency have more than one manager? Okay, now that we sounds that other agencies will use pets eventually will reach out for pets.
So I added this question. We may want to rephrase it because I'm using a little bit of technical stuff in here, but really it comes down to separate instances or multi-tenancy. The red is not meant for him, of course, for us.
So, let us try to phrase something about about the branches. The major issue I have here is that we have three different actors that I'm not sure how to name. So let's have the person. Um, do we need to know? No, we need to know. Let's just do we need to know the location where a specific person is working at, person at agency employee.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. Because basically an agency employee can have multiple things,
Mm-hmm.
can have multiple names.
My suspicion is he'll say yes to that.
Yep, mine as well. Because if he says yes to this one, we had a question about the job developers and the case managers having a specific, not client, specific employer or a specific job seeker.
What was the question you're thinking of?
I'm thinking if we have, no, I don't know. I'm trying to look into this and I'm just getting all messed up.
One of the things that I think we have to do with Chet, or any client like Chet, a smart guy but doesn't think in terms of system,
Mm-hmm.
is be very careful what questions we ask. Because if we ask questions that are really not important, all of a sudden we're going down another rat hole that we don't need to go down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to figure out if it's important or not. And for instance, you know, you've asked a question here about should we manage, you know, keep track of an agency manager. In addition to case manager and job developer, do we have to worry about who's actually the manager of the agency? And I would suggest that's not needed. I don't know why we'd ask that, because that's going to open another, you know, set of questions that we have to pursue.
I know, but there's here a point where it says,
I know.
last paragraph, it says somewhere that they assign titles to their employees who they feel will be fit for that position.
Well, yeah, they define, agency manager says you're a job developer, you're a case manager. You know where I think that came from? If you could scroll down again, you are. So, let me see. Scroll down just a bit more where we ask. Okay.
What it says that.
Okay, so you see the question, what is the name of the agency member that represents the job seeker? And what is the name of the agency member that represents the employer? Now, the problem with that question is we asked what is the name. What we meant to ask was what is the role of the agency member and what is the role of the agency member that represents the employer. So when he saw name, he was thinking of a specific individual. And he says, well, that person will be assigned by the agency manager. That'll be Joe or Fred or Sally. That's going to be the name of the person, but the agency manager will decide who that is. You know what I mean? So that's where he got into talking about the agency is a company. There's somebody who manages it, somebody who manages people's roles and titles. That's great, but to us, I don't think it matters at all. I don't think we want to track agency managers or who reports to who. It doesn't make any difference to us. It just adds needless complexity.
But the question at this point is, we need to have a role of a person that can create job developers and case managers.
Well, we talked about this idea of the system administrator,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that person is somebody at Met. Let's say somebody works at MetPlus who manages the system, creates roles, assigns people to roles, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That person would do that.
Yeah, but then we will need one specific person per agency.
Well, yeah, if we have a separate instance of the system per agency, then each agency has to have a system administrator.
So I need to
But
understand that first.
yeah, so tracking agency managers and who reports to who and all of that, I think is an area we don't want to get into, and I don't think it's required for this.
Okay, so let's
I had a question with
let's try to go back a little bit to
Yep.
this first list thing. How can we try to phrase that question? Will we have an instance of this application per agency?
Well, that was that question that I added there. Now that we have established that other agencies will use pets.
Can we assume that MetPlus would be responsible for maintaining the SaaS application and other agencies would pay to use the application?
So that, at this point, I know you guys may want to get into what does lease mean, is there financial implications, and do we have to look at our open source licensing to see if it violates all that?
No, that's not what that was not
Look.
my point. What I want to understand is, first of all, what he means by lease. Because if he just wants to collect money for people to use the system, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
Open source.
Like software as service, whatever we use, we have to pay for the cloud, something like that.
Exactly.
I do not understood. Okay.
It's from our point of view at our initial design, we need to know is it a multi-tenant system or just be separate instances per agency.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference in design, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to put into a phrase where maybe in not so technical terms, I'm not quite sure how to put that multi-tenancy.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't use the word multi-tenancy with Chet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could say, will each agency go to its own website or interact with its own website? Or will all the agencies go to the same website?
I thought, yes, I thought more or less something like that, but that would not answer our question. Because they might have some sort of specific web page, let's call it, but they could use all the same pool of users,
Mm-hmm.
pool of jobs.
I guess the question is, do we need to share databases?
Yeah, that's critical. So the way I tried to describe it in that...
Or could we potentially break out the database into an API, like its own instance, so that everyone's integrated through it, like more like a microservice?
Well, my sense of Chet is that he knows databases. He understands what we mean between a shared database or separate database per agency. So
Right.
Using that kind of stuff in the question to him would be okay. Anything beyond that, of course, we don't want to get too technical.
But we don't. I don't think that answers the question really, because in some ways it's an implementation detail, and we need to figure out what the implications are. We need to figure out how to phrase the implications of one versus the other.
Do you think
Right,
that the question that I highlighted could help to try to understand this?
I don't know if that's too simple, Yua, because he could say somebody from agency A could just go to agency B's MetPlus, Pet's website and search from the outside. I think I feel more comfortable with very specific about shared databases versus separate database. He'll know what that means.
So let's.
I don't want to simplify it too much because.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will all the agents.
Right, he'll know what that means, but does he understand the implications of it?
Well, we could elaborate on what shared database means. It means that, unfettered access to other agencies' data unless we block it out.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where the implications come in right there. Yep.
Something like this.
I mean, looking at this from the employer side, there's no requirement that an employer have just one agency, right? So would the employer have to go to multiple websites or multiple domains?
That's a good. That's a good observation because
I mean, if I'm an employer, and I say, agency A, do I have to go to agency A.metsplus.com or whatever? And then if I'm worried about, do I have to remember which agency I'm dealing with, or is it all integrated? Unless you get, I mean, the only way around it would be
well, maybe we need
to break the database out into services, basically, so that you could still run. So that an employer could come to a given site and everything could be integrated from their end. If that makes sense at all, what I'm saying.
I'm thinking maybe if we just because yes, because an employer can also put jobs even if they are not associated with any agency. Because that was one of the questions.
That's also true, yeah.
I believe.
And where would those jobs live?
Yes, it's here. No, it's not this one. Multiple users possible. No, I believe it not put that question here. So what I would do is try to first understand try to get an answer in this question here. And then after that, if he says, no, I want this everything separated per agency, we can just go back and tell him, okay, let's imagine an employer has two agencies. How would that work?
Why don't you add a third bullet under shared databases, which is employers. Well, I was thinking of under your shared databases, you have two bullets. Another implication of shared databases is that employer would be able to see all of their posted jobs across all agencies. If it's a single database, that's easy to do.
So basically, each agency speakers. There's another one because this needs to be a shared database thing. Because let's imagine you're a job seeker. How do you need to get associated with an agency to be able to get a job, or you just register into what he calls the cloud, and then things happen?
Well, you can go direct, of course. A job seeker can directly post a resume and apply directly to
Yeah,
employers.
but if we have this share, if we have like separate databases,
Then you have got the access to it.
yeah, you cannot have like a user that where would
I
they
know.
go to this?
So job seekers and employers have a vested stake in having a single database where they just have to do it once. It's available to everybody, all agencies. So it's good that we're going to make him aware that he may say,
Unless we have a more complicated architecture.
right, exactly.
And I guess there's no enthusiasm for that.
We can head that off with a single database, and that's the way to go. And we wall out some information as private to an agency. Other agencies don't see it. Other data all agencies can see. That would be a design challenge, but that may be the way we have to go when you think of the implications of this.
That might not be that hard to do. Maybe just flag
It's
the
doable.
thing, so technically it wouldn't be that much of a problem. Of course, the multi-tenancy has this awesome thing that you can just fire up an instance and change the logos, and everything could be very simple because it would be agents to a specific agency.
Yeah.
If we're going to have all the agencies everywhere,
And being the user system administrator for this may not be trivial. Maybe you have to learn and you have to maintain standards. And if we have 12 different agencies doing this, I'm not sure we'd have 12 different capable people all doing the same thing. So it might be able to centralizing it would have that benefit as well.
I believe this one will win.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll win him over. Just that line. Will be able to search jobs related by the same agency. Are associated with their agency. Employers need to create same job in the same job in multiple agencies websites. I don't like this website here. I can just keep it closed. Now we need to create the same job. Create
Also, what kind of implications will it have on scaling one shared database?
I don't know. It will depend on the amount of traffic that we have. Because if we have like, I don't know, 2,000 job seekers and I don't know 100 agencies, I doubt that we need to have much problem there. But if this scales to another level, that would be an issue.
Texas National, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, then we'll just get something around on Amazon servers and multiple instances
Exactly.
of databases and divide the users per place. I don't know.
You know, as Armando Fox said during the SAS course, he said Pivotal Tracker runs everything, all of their user stuff
Yeah.
on one database. I think if they can do it, we'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I think so. It's too long.
That's a good set of things for him to ponder.
Yeah. So can you? Okay. But if we go to a shared database thing, yeah, if we go to a shared database thing, we might not need to have this agency managers. We just could have like 4 or 5 managers of the whole system that will give permissions to the multiple users, and that's it. So get rid of
So,
this
I mean,
I mean, we could still have separated databases and have a job queue that then posts the jobs to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, separate databases, yes, but the problem here, uh, that's that database thing, because if you basically if we have um, a site per agency and we have a separate database for each agency, I don't know.
Well, you'd have to encode all the logic in the queue, like the logic to maintain consistency across databases.
Yeah, but you're talking in a scenario where we have a shared database, and for scalability issues, we'll create multiple instances of it, right?
No separate databases.
So you're thinking that we could try to get a mechanism to get separate databases, but the jobs would be centralized in some way?
In a way, I mean, you can have separated databases and put them on a queue, and then the queue posts a request to some backend API that then maintains that job, like it inserts it into each agency's site. So that, say I'm an employer and I come on the agency for on an agency, and we would need some way to know which agencies an employer is associated with,
Mm-hmm.
and then post it to all of their agencies.
we could have somewhat federated model. I agree, but I think we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves right now. We're just focusing on client requirements. If the client requirements drive us to that kind of a more complex model,
I think we should try to guide the client to
yeah,
a
yeah.
shared database system that will allow us to have everything in one place.
I think that makes sense too.
Yeah, that way we would not have to create some systems that would allow us to share things between databases and between websites and everything. That would make us the job pretty easy. But easy now. Easier.
Well, let's see where we end up with the requirements once we get it nailed down
Okay,
here.
so in terms of this, what does it mean by lease? Uh, what kind of information do we need here? Maybe we don't need this question anymore because I believe
Um,
we're not. I'm going to postpone this list thing until we have the answer of the shared database,
yep.
because this list might be just simply they, let's say, just pay to have the system online, and that would be something like helping to pay the server expenses.
You wrote job seeker can create a job. You mean create a resume? and apply to all jobs. Probably is what you mean.
Here, it's wrong. Can create an account.
And apply to all jobs.
Which agency pay pass to use the cloud version of that? Not sure if this should be here. Let's just you can just move here.
I think you can just, yeah, there you go.
And this
It's not the easiest editor to use.
Okay, so can you assume that not maintain the SaaS application? The other agency will pay patient offset maintain costs. I think we can just keep this here, just more in terms of information. These two questions.
Yeah, I think it's just context for us. It's not critical, but it's good to know what he's thinking.
And basically, if we want a shared or not database, so we think we should skip this agency manager for now.
I'd rather not ask it because, I mean, you may have a different opinion. I don't think it's critical to us. I don't think we need to track management of the developers and case managers. And if we start down that path, we just have another series of questions we have to resolve.
I'm just afraid that in a short period of time we might have some issues here. And when he says, okay, because agency A wants to have, we don't have like a centralized team that will take care of these assignments of case manager roles and job developers. We would have to have per agency managers, but we can just kick it to the front and assume that these two roles are assigned by a single user.
Yeah.
Like this. So this is
they're assigned by some sysadmin. The sysadmin can be the agency manager. It could be the secretary of the agency manager. He tells that person what to do, who to assign to what role. But I think if we can stay away from keeping track of who reports to who, we're in better shape.
Can one person in one agency have more than one role? Yep. No, so other agencies will use this.
So we've already recast that in what we did up top there.
Okay, so
that whole bullet can go now.
Take the bullet?
Okay. Yeah.
Do we need to know the location where the agency is working at? Maybe this is not the correct question to ask.
How about, should we track the location where an agency employee is assigned to? In other words, this job developer is at location A, and this job developer, same agency, is at location B. Does he care to know about that stuff? Seems like he might, but I don't know.
So, be aware of the location of job or agency employee. Employee.
Perhaps in parentheses, so he doesn't think we're talking about all agency employees. Maybe we ought to just elaborate of each job developer and case manager rather than say agency employee. Yeah, there you go, something like that.
Just.
You know what I mean? If we leave it open-ended, he might take it too far.
I'm trying to think in a possible use case scenario where we would need this information, and I cannot find it.
I can't either. But he did go on about locations, etc. So to us, it's okay. What does that mean from us for system designers?
Maybe we can. So we need a location. One agency can be in multiple locations, so we need to we need to have that information. So
Yep.
I was going to ask him what kind of information do you want us to save for, like an address and a phone number, a fax number, what kind of information you wanted to save, but ooh, for now, I'm not sure. Nice.
Yep.
Can a job developer be one HR person of a company? That you mean employer here? I suggest you do not ask this question as it seems clear that the job developer is an employee of a job agency and the client meaning the role. What I'm saying here is that I want to understand if a company, so a job creator can have
Different location.
multiple job developers that are not associated with any agency. Like if the company will work like an agency as a job developer.
Say that again. So that last sentence.
I want to understand if basically a company will be an agency, let's say it like that, that would provide job developers.
Like, what do you mean? You mean a company as in
Job creator.
like a job, like an employer?
Yeah, like an employer.
Can an employer have a job developer? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I think everything that he's said suggests that a job developer is an employee of an agency, and that a job developer can be working with a company but doesn't work for a company.
So in that case, we will need to have a separate role here for the person on the company.
Can we not use the term company anymore? I'm getting confused. So we have employer and we have job agency. Let's just limit our vocabulary to that, please. So can you rephrase that? I still don't get what you're getting at here.
We have an employer that can create jobs. Okay.
Yep.
Create a new job posting. But if it doesn't use an agency, the employer needs to have someone from the company. The employer needs to have someone of their employees, some of their employees that can create those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to understand is if
you want to know the name for that?
Yes.
Or the role?
If they are like job developers, or we need to create a new actor that works as a company employee, as an employer employee.
We had a question about can more than one user and an employee post jobs, and he came back and he says yes. Mm-hmm. So we do have the idea that an employer mm-hmm. will have people who can come in and post jobs. All we need to know is that they're associated with the right employer, so we can tie the job to the correct employer.
Okay, so
I don't think we necessarily need to keep track of the role of a HR person and post in a job. I don't see the need for that.
But in that case, we need to create a new. Can we just call him the employee? The employer? This one?
Yeah.
So this is not the company itself. It's
based on the job type. If it is a full-time, sometimes they directly posting the requirement. It is a contract type. They will go through the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're asking for what the name of that would be in the system. How do we refer to it?
Yes.
And what would that role be referred to as? Not that we're going to model the employer's employee relationships, but rather that an employer can have whatever that role is fulfilled by someone.
Yes.
And they can log in and it'll be associated with their account.
What I want to understand is that if an employer can have a job developer, as well as the agency can have a job developer.
Yeah.
I don't think that makes a job developer by definition is a broker between an agency and an employer, or possibly a job seeker and an employer. You know what I mean?
How do we call this guy that works for the employer?
Well, let me just elaborate. So there's two models I think here that might make sense, and it changes the question depending upon what we think he wants. One is an employer has an ID that they can use to post jobs, and anybody in that who's an employee of the employer can log in using the employer company name and the ID to post jobs. So there's that. The other model is there's only certain authorized users, sometimes only one, sometimes two or three. In other words, employees of the employer who by name are authorized in our system to log in on behalf of the employer and post jobs. You know what I mean? So this is basically just an employee ID, employer ID versus authorized user at the employer. Those are the two models that I think are.
Yes.
So I think that's kind of what we want to ask them, right? Which of those two models do we want to design for here? Is that what you were getting at, or does that make sense?
No. Yes, it makes sense, but your second option is basically a job developer.
A job developer.
Okay,
I don't see that.
Not in this domain. I don't think that's how he's using that term.
Yeah, I don't see that. I think it kind of confuses it to call it.
I was
Call it a job
this
developer.
scenario here.
Job seeker to employer directly.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the employer would have
Posts the job and the job seeker applies to it.
Yeah. So it would work basically like the person that creates the job here. It works basically like a job developer. But
I don't see that at all.
Let's just change this here. So employer.
I think you should ask the question that Patrick asked.
Yeah.
You should ask the question he asked. Should.
One. How do we say a login or a user?
One user account at the employer.
Have multiple user accounts and can create jobs on behalf of employer. Are these the two options?
I think that's pretty good. Yep.
So let's hear the question. From the two options. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so job developers. Let me just remove this one here.
Yeah. So, let me just. I feel I need to explain myself why I didn't see the parallel to job developer being a role within an employer. When Chet says job developer, he's talking about a guy who works in an agency. He's got a bunch of job seekers they're trying to find jobs for. He calls up employers. He makes personal relationships with people at the employers. He takes people out to lunch to get them to owe them a favor. He does everything he can to have a person-to-personal relationship with multiple employees at multiple employers so he can land jobs for the job seekers. So it's, when he says job, that's what he's got in his head. It's much more than just posting a job to a website. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
I get it. I was thinking in a job developer like of functional subset of things that you can do. But
In
yeah.
terms of system functionality, yeah.
So, do you put some parentheses here? You wanted
So I
to
didn't understand your second bulleted question there, other than,
so
did you
you
mean
put
to say what I said there?
you put this here,
Oh,
or
if I did, that was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that.
so job developer working two or two.
Employers.
Okay, okay. No, this was
Oh, you're
related
talking
to
about
this.
can a job developer work for two agencies?
Yeah, this was this scenario
Oh, I see. Yeah.
maybe here. So because it will not work, a job developer will not work for any company, for any employer.
Yep.
Okay, so it should not be there. Okay, so MetPlus organization specific. MetPlus will be one more agency inside of that system.
Is that redundant with the stuff we put at the top here? I think we're kind of asking that with our second main question there about the shared database stuff. Or maybe not. Maybe we still need it so that he can comment on that. I guess it doesn't hurt to leave it in.
The thing here is I want to make clear that MetPlus is just another agency. Is not a specific. It's not like the administrator of the whole system that will have like superpowers or something. It will just be one more. And there's a system, and MetPlus works as an agency for the system. That's just what I wanted to make sure that it just says here. Yes.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, so here let's move this to employees maybe to stop referring this as companies. What does it mean for companies to be linked? Same employer, with multiple locations.
But the problem with that, I think when he's talking about some companies may be linked, I think he's talking about an agency with multiple locations, and so the locations are linked for the agency. It's confusing, but that's what I think he's getting at.
Yeah, because it first says so the agency is looks like an employer, and then it starts talking about companies.
Yeah, so the fact that he pivoted from agency to company tells me he says an agency is a company in and of itself, so that has bosses, etc. And then the rest of this has to do with agency. That's my take on this, but I could be wrong. You do have to read between the lines.
Yes.
No doubt about it. That's why I say we have to be careful what questions we ask, because we're going to go through this over and over again.
We need to do very close questions that we could answer like with an yes or no, so we are sure that we're in the right path.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does it mean? Some companies may be linked. Some employer.
What you could do as a first sentence sub-bullet under that would say, please clarify whether company here refers to agency or employer. And
we need to give them the context, right?
Yes. Yep.
Employer or agency.
Maybe you can color code when you quote some companies may be linked. Maybe you can kind of color code that with the text downstream that we're referring to?
You're going to have to quote that in the email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he wrote in red in the email. When I posted here, I changed the color.
Okay, yeah.
So. Mm-hmm. Okay. So,
No, I mean you quote the larger context so you can see what you're talking about.
So you're saying that in the email I just pick up this phrase? There's somewhere here.
I mean, if you exchange an email with him and you just quote some phrase in the email, I don't know whether he would understand.
Okay.
Yeah, he probably won't. That's
the whole paragraph.
Okay. So, do you see any more questions that we might want to add to this?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Do you guys think maybe we should just remove this part here? We don't need it. I believe we can just...
Yeah, I think we've already established that what we just wrote there and what he says are the same, so we're aligned on those roles now, which is great. We've actually made a lot of progress in the last day.
So what I think we can do it like yesterday. If you guys have no more comments here, I'll just leave the text here. If you guys see anything some more question that pops up, you can edit the document here, and tomorrow morning I will send it to chat, and I'll try to. I believe tomorrow I'll have a little bit more time during the morning. And if he answered, because he answered me at noon, so I can just pick up his answer and post it in here, and we can just move forward. Do you think it's okay?
Sounds good. If I early in the morning, I'll take one more look at it. But we've talked it pretty well in this meeting, so this is great. I think it's in good shape.
Okay. After this, I think we need to start thinking in how are we going to pass this information that we have in this email thread into the other document. But when we have something more specific, more clear, we need to start changing the documentation that we have and try to put this information in one place.
Yep.
It's okay.
So that other document is in pretty good shape because most of the assumptions behind those statements in the other doc he confirmed.
Yeah, what I'm saying is more just things that we clarified here, that got more clear in this thread. We might need to pass it to other documents, like the overview document or something.
Oh yeah. Yeah, gotcha.
And that we need to think as well. So, do you guys have anything else? Any more comment? Anything else?
No, I'm good.
If not, I'll have to leave now. And if you guys want to keep on just going or want to pair into this and look into more things, you're more than welcome. Okay? So, I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll do the rest today. We'll scrum first and then pair a little bit on the answers that will should give us, and we'll see. Okay?
Sounds good.
So, see you all tomorrow.
All right.
Have a nice evening.
All right. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you.